Thanks for coming. Last session of the conference.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
So we wanted to start out by acknowledging that talk about diversity and inclusion makes everybody uncomfortable. We're all aware to some extent of our biases. We know that we've given offense to people in the past, and we feel bad about it. It's actually a good thing, right? That's our conscience working as it's supposed to. Understanding when our actions have hurt others is an important first step into mending relationships and improving going forward. And we want to help you move beyond that feeling of guilt and focus on making things better for you and for your teams.
For sure. And also, we're not experts in this field. I think Clayton and I have both experienced exclusion in this industry. We've had a lot of experience working with platform teams. We just want to share what we've learned with you.
Yeah.
So that's us. We work in Pivotal Labs on platform ops.
You're Bridget.
I'm Bridget. Clayton, thank you.
I'm Clayton. And between us, we've consulted directly with 30 platform ops teams and worked with countless more surrounding teams in infrastructure, databases, messaging, and things like that. We've worked all across North America with teams from mid-sized companies to the largest banks in the United States and Canada. We've worked in industries from banking and finance to energy to manufacturing and retail, and even the US Air Force.
And we've had the opportunity to learn from really high-performing, awesome teams. We've set up new teams. We've come in and helped teams struggling on the way, and we've witnessed what works on really awesome, well-performing teams.
We've seen a whole lot, and it's enough to make us pretty confident that we have some collective wisdom to share, and in fact, some wisdom that we'd be remiss not to share.
So why does it matter? Why are we talking about diversity and inclusion? So, when I first started going to talk about diversity and inclusion, I just wanted a safe space for me to do well. But it actually turns out that there's business value to having diverse teams. Diverse teams are smarter. They perform well, they focus better on objective facts, they keep their team members' bias in check, and they innovate better. So creating diverse teams is not just the right thing to do, it is the right thing to do, but it also makes your team perform better and be smarter.
Yeah, that's right. And in 2016, Charles Duhigg with the New York Times published the results of a 2-year-long study that Google had done, Google style, called Project Aristotle, to figure out what goes into making a high-performing team. And the results were really surprising. You would kind of expect that high-performing engineers, individuals on a team, might affect team performance. It would make sense that a team stacked with 10x engineers would be the high-performing team. But in fact, across all of the dozens or hundreds of teams that they measured and all of the different axes of data that they recorded and analyzed, the high-performing teams had 2 things in common. One was that every member of the team had roughly equal voice in team conversations, and the team members exhibited high social sensitivity, the ability to read what someone else's emotional state is in their tone of voice or in their eyes and respond to it appropriately. You can read more about that psychological safety study and how Google is applying that to the effectiveness of their teams at the link in our slides that'll be posted to SlideShare later.
So you can definitely create your diverse teams. Everyone wants to get more diversity on their team. Like, yep, I'm bought in, let's do this. But then there's the other side of the coin, the inclusion. Most of the women I know who have left the tech industry, they're not leaving it because the tech's hard. They're leaving it because the culture sucks. So if you don't create inclusive teams where voices can be heard, it's not going to help. You're going to lose your diversity. People are going to leave. People are going to go to other fields that are more welcoming. So we need to work on getting those voices heard, making them feel supported, so that once we create our diverse teams, we have a culture where they want to stay.
All right, so let's take a look for a second at what the state is of diversity in DevOps. To do that, we're going to look at some results from the State of DevOps reports by the DevOps research and assessment team, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jean Kim, Jez Humble, and collaborators. For years, Dora has collected, analyzed, and reported demographics data from DevOps, and we wanted to show some of those stats.
So we have a couple years worth of data here. This is gender in DevOps. The solid blue line towards the top is the amount of people who identify as female. It does look like it changed a little bit in like 2018, 2019. They changed the question a little bit that you could actually not specify. So I think that's kind of why that looks a little weird. But yeah, we have a ways to go. It's lonely in that little blue bar.
And if you look around the room, I haven't done the quick math, but it kind of looks roughly like that in here.
For sure. And on the other side of the coin, well, not the same side, because gender is included in the minority. These are people who identify different races, genders, or other characteristics. A little better, but obviously nowhere near a parity with the white male that we have as a majority.
Yeah. Speaking of disability for a second, I had the pleasure to work with a colleague in VMware last year who's been blind since he was a boy. Can you imagine what it must be like to work with Concourse or a Pivotal platform without the ability to see? So I do know that we've had several teammates in the field who have connected platform engineers, customers of Pivotal Platform, with visual disability, with Pivotal Cloud R&D to improve the accessibility of our products. And if you'd like to learn more about that kind of thing, Pivotal senior software engineer Eliza Ayerstuck offered a session yesterday called Building an Inclusive Software Product. You might want to look it up on YouTube later. And we also wanted to call out this statistic in particular because it illustrates a really interesting disparity between the tech industry and DevOps in particular, and how age discrimination is legally defined, at least in the United States. So in a lot of US states, age discrimination is defined as occurring with ages above 40. But you'll notice that in DevOps, the overwhelming majority is around the age of 40.
Yeah, and nearly half is there.
Yeah.
Nearly half of the folks in this field have 16 years or more of experience. We're leaving out a huge proportion of new ideas, unconstrained by years of convention. And that's only, I mean, I'm in the 3 to 5 year. I'm 9%.
Yeah, yeah.
So, exclusion. How did we get here? What caused us to get in this state?
Yeah, so as you're probably familiar if you're working in a DevOps type role or adjacent to it or interested in it, it's been a really common IT leadership practice in the last several decades to apply scientific management or Taylorism to software delivery, right? Dividing requirements gathering from planning, from implementation, implementation from operationalization, and putting up big walls in between those functional silos. And the tendency, of course, is to optimize for efficiency within each functional silo, often to the exclusion of the users that those are supposed to serve. This leads to miscommunication, right? Misalignment, and ultimately, poor business results.
And we all know, we're here at this conference, we're trying to break down those barriers, trying to stop the exclusion. Let's make everyone work together.
Exactly. So similarly to the silos in IT organizations, people kind of tend to silo too. It takes work to interact with other human beings, right? It's emotional labor, and the more similar a person is, the easier it is to connect with them. Just in the unconscious managing of our emotional labor, we select to interact with people who are more like us.
You know, I see that when I walk into a room. Generally, it's mostly men, and I'm the only other woman. But I see another woman, and I'm like, oh, yes, you know, you get me. I can like give looks across the room when someone interrupts me, like, oh, yeah, you picked up on that.
Right.
It's awesome. So I do that too, even as the minority binding together and excluding the majority.
Exactly. It feels good to be with people like us, but the more that we indulge in that comfort of a self-same group, the harder it becomes for us to connect with people who are different from us. Someone coming into a team with 15 years more experience or 15 years less experience, somebody coming in with a different skin color or a different gender, or maybe a gender we're not sure about. Those folks are met with microaggressions, awkward silence, insensitive questions, maybe constant interruption, or maybe worst of all, just being ignored.
So, the fun part, what can we do to fix this? How can we reverse this trend and start making it better? We want to share some techniques across kind of the job roles people fall in that we've seen work to create more inclusive cultures.
Yeah, and we'd like to offer some things for everybody in the crowd, whether you're an individual contributor, just an engineer, maybe at the majority end of the context that you work in, or a leader, someone who leads teams, not necessarily with direct reports, or a manager if you have people that actually report to you, or whether you're a woman or another underrepresented minority in DevOps. We've got some advice for each of you. We invite you to take these techniques that we're going to talk about back to your teams. Try them out and see if they don't improve the way things work. So for individual contributors, by starting just to understand your own implicit bias that each one of us has, you can begin to actually change your thinking and turn that into action. We're going to make mistakes, and that's all right, like I said before, but unless we make a concerted effort to be aware of ourselves and to be inclusive of others, nothing's going to change. I personally have lots of privilege in my contexts, and it's really easy for me to connect with other guys in this field.
Microaffirmations, the good part, the counter to microaggressions. I assume everyone here has heard of microaggressions. We talk about it a lot. And they're pervasive in the industry. I don't think we're going to stop that today, tomorrow, next week. But microaffirmations, I find when microaggressions happen and someone has a microaffirmation to counter it, even just acknowledging the minorities in the group helps a lot. And those are what I remember more than the microaggressions. So things like making eye contact, nodding, thanks Clayton. Thanks to many people in the audience right now. Giving someone credit. I think there's a lot of us women who have said something in a meeting and a man repeats it, and then like, that was great, Clayton. Wait,
No, that was Bridget that said
that. And it's hard to speak up and say that sometimes. You're just like, whoa, what just happened? So I think just identifying that really helps create a better culture where we can start to change and be better.
Yeah. And as with all the techniques and practices that we teach at Pivotal Labs, it's hard to get it right immediately. You can't be perfect right away. We're going to make mistakes, and it's really hard to change habits, especially when things get stressful, as they kind of sometimes seem to do. It's important to acknowledge your mistake, right? To apologize to somebody if you slighted them, to forgive yourself for that.
Right.
And not beat yourself up about it too much. And then to move on and continue to practice these things day after day. It's only in that practicing that it becomes a routine and natural part of your behavior. So leaders, when you talk, people listen. That makes it so important that you yourself listen to all of your team members more than you talk. A great technique that we've found to do this in platform dojos is pass the conch, right? And we pass it around to folks at stand-up and in discussions and things like that. Our friends in Europe actually pass a Beanie Baby goose. That's their mascot in the platform dojo there. And whoever has the goose or the conch gets to talk, and no one else is allowed to interrupt them during that time.
One thing that I love that we start doing at Pivotal, I think we've all been on the exclusion side of there's a meeting going on and you're the only remote attendee. And you're on the phone, you're watching like everyone interact. Like I try to get a word in. It's hard. I can't pick up on nonverbal communication going on in the room, and you just feel excluded. And that's definitely a form of exclusion in the industry that I see all the time. So what Pivotal does a lot is one person's remote, whole team's remote. Go to your computers, put your cameras on, let's all work that way. And something else I see itself is every single customer I've been to, no one can ever find a meeting room. We're always like, where are we gonna go? Oh, yeah, that's booked, so it solves that problem too. Yeah. And then we're all on the same level playing field. We can all interact the same.
Yeah.
And be inclusive.
Everyone gets equal voice.
Yeah.
Admit ignorance is ironically one of the most powerful techniques I've learned from Pivotal Labs. It's really tempting to pretend that you know everything, that you have all the answers, or even just to stay quiet when you don't know. But when you actively admit that you don't know something or you're not sure, one, it opens an opportunity for other members of your team to contribute. But two, it also models the behavior that it's safe to be vulnerable and to take a risk. And it raises the psychological safety on the team.
Back to microaggressions, they happen. It's not great for anyone. I don't think people who even do them like it when it's called out. It's like, and I don't think people are bad people who commit microaggressions towards the minority groups. Correcting it with kindness does two things. It's going to not alienate the person who did it. Like, I don't think that came off how you meant it to. Person the microaggression was against, it makes them feel so much better. When people stand up for me, when I get interrupted, or when I get told, do you need to go check with the guys back at Pivotal on this? And someone's like, no, Bridget knows what she's doing. She's got it. Those like corrections of it make such a difference in a place that I want to continue to work at.
Managers, we don't have to remind you, I hope, you are an extension of the company, in part shaping the reality of its values and culture. Even in what seems like private contexts, keep your behavior beyond reproach. That'll help you set the tone and behavior that you want to see in your team.
And hiring, everyone's like, where do I want to hire for diversity? Where's the pipeline? Where do I find these people? And there's a lot of techniques that I've seen use. I visited one customer a while ago. He might be in this room, who the interview question list was all questions. I couldn't pass it. It was all super experienced Linux sysadmin questions. I don't have a background in that. I couldn't get through that. And if you're asking those questions to weed out that group of people, you're only going to have typical sysadmins, which, let's face it, it's a lot of older white dudes.
Yeah.
So what are we actually hiring for? I'm sure people have seen the statistic about a woman will apply for a job if she meets 60% of the criteria on a job description. No, men will do it 60%.
Yeah.
Women will do it when they meet 100%. So if you have this job description, we're gonna go through it and be like, oh, I don't make that one, not gonna apply. Or a man's like, oh, yeah, I could figure it out, I'll do it.
Yeah, got this.
Or even, no matter how many bullet points you have, the tech skills you want, if a man meets 3 of those, he's like, yeah, I'll apply. Where the woman, again, is like, nope, I need to meet every single one of them. So the way you write your job descriptions, take out those nice to haves. It's going to make you have more women and minorities will apply because they will think they're more qualified. They won't automatically weed themselves out as I can't do that job.
Yeah.
Get them in the door. Still hire the best people for the job, but get your pool to be more diverse so you have more diversity to choose from.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one thing that I'm really excited about with Pivotal's hiring, we put in an explicit clause in our job listings that acknowledges what Bridget just said. And we straight up state, we're looking to keep this application open until we have at least 2 qualified individuals from underrepresented minorities. That does 2 things, right? One, it hopefully assures that we've got some diversity in the pool for that application, for that requisition. But the other thing that it does is it says to folks like Bridget, go for this. Do it. We're
Try.
leaving it open for you.
And I see that, and I don't apply to all of them. I'm not ready to be like in a manager role. But I see that, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe. Let me think about that. It kind of reminds me of like, yes, I automatically saw that title, and I thought it wasn't good enough, but I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe.
Yeah.
And that helps, just to push you a little bit in that direction. So, women and other minorities. Do you ever give advice to someone that you have a really hard time taking? Find your voice is hard for me. I struggle with this right at this moment.
You're doing great.
I don't like public presenting. I have a really hard time getting my voice heard in meetings. If I get interrupted, I might just shut down. And it's hard. I need to go through mental gymnastics of like, speak up, your voice needs to be heard. It's valuable to the team. So finding your voice is so important. Be brave and courageous. Working on it, getting better every day. Support is also, I joined Pivotal a year and a half ago. The first time I ever worked with Pivotal, I knew it was like a place I want to be. There are 3 values: always be kind, do the right thing, do what works. Like, yes, that makes sense. And at Pivotal, there is such a tremendous culture of support, especially with women and minorities. There's employee resource groups that make it really nice to have a place to go. We have a private Slack channel that is phenomenal if you just need to vent about something and someone can say, hey, yeah, that sucks, or hey, I need advice. I'm having a hard time. Everyone keeps interrupting me in this meeting. I'm having a hard time getting my voice in, and like everyone jumps in, like, oh, that happened to me, I tried this. We did like a raise your hand feature in Zoom when we wanted to talk. And those kind of like awesome ideas, like it's just having a place to go. Sometimes you just need to vent. Just say, hey, this sucks, let's move on. If it's something that we need to correct, we can do that. Here are options to do that. It's awesome to have that kind of inclusive culture. It makes me want to stay in this industry.
Yeah.
And kind of like a job pitch. So my background is in software development. I did it for the first 10 years of my career. I loved it. I love writing code. And I got the opportunity to become a platform engineer. And this is unlike the women and minorities. I understand that there's not a lot of women developers. They have the same problems. But when I was a developer, I saw some. There's none on the DevOps side. So I don't necessarily want to steal all the women who are developers and be like, come here, but it's a really cool place to be, especially right now.
Yeah. So I've worked with some teams that have had traditional software, people with software development backgrounds, and they've been great. My first Pivotal platform team was one. I recently, though, did a platform dojo with a team that was entirely software developers, and it was phenomenal. They were such a high-performing team. We can't recommend enough the practice of hiring for your platform team from software developers. Plus, as Goldman Sachs developer Alex said at the keynote yesterday, developers on your platform team bring empathy to the platform team for the developer experience. So we all know Ansi's CF push haiku, right? Here is my source code. Run it on the cloud for me. I do not care how. He recently shared with us a cloud corollary haiku for us. Here is their source code. Run it on the cloud for them. We care deeply how.
The funny thing is, when I was a developer, I didn't know the how. Like, I kind of heard terms like DNS, routing, load balancers, like high level, kind of knew what was going on. And as a technologist, I want to know how everything works. And when I got into doing platform engineering and on DevOps team, I'm like, oh, wow, like one, this is super exciting. And now I see how all the pieces fit together. Like the puzzle was now complete. I saw the big picture. It makes me a better technologist. If I want to go back to development, it'll make me a better developer.
Yeah, exactly.
So be kind,
Yeah, please be kind. If you would like to read more about diversity in tech, Pivotal has a great site, pivotal.io/diversity. And
End of the conference. 5 minutes left. If anyone
anybody
has
wanna
questions.
ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, right here.
I have a question. How do you prevent inclusion becoming exclusion? And I'm going to give an example. Let's say I create a private Slack room for Hispanic women. And then I have an employee that might be Hispanic and non-binary.
Right.
Right? Am I included? Am I excluded? I might be a Hispanic woman and I might be half Hispanic, half white. Am I sort of now
Right.
my own identity? And just that little Slack room has made me question that and possibly excluded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough.
So the question was about how inclusion can turn into exclusion. I had a man at Pivotal say that he didn't like us having those channels because he wasn't part of them. They were exclusionary towards him, and I never saw that perspective. That is really, really interesting. Maybe the channels aren't for him. Maybe his whole life has been practice of having that support. I don't know. I think our default is to have public channels. Sometimes you need a safe space, though, and I think that's what some of our private channels at Pivotal are for. But public channels definitely help solve that problem of allowing anyone to come in as needed, not having to self-identify as something to be part of.
Yeah, I've actually popped into a couple of the women channels at Pivotal, being a strong supporter of women in tech myself, and have introduced myself. Like usually in the channel header, they'll have a description of who's welcome there, and if it's open, then I might say, hey, I'm popping in. I'm going to be really quiet here, but I just want to emoji react to the awesome stuff. And then if there's nothing in the channel header, I will straight up say, hey, I'm coming in here because I want to support y'all. If this is not the place for me to be, please let me know and I'll leave. I like the open by default, and I like the really gentle and kind approach into those groups. I might suggest both of those techniques, but it really is a sensitive kind of thing, and I would just recommend always approaching those in kindness.
In the back?
Yeah, I think to his point, I see that as well in certain situations. But I think when you're not part of that group, so for me, okay, I'm a minority, but if there's a group for women, then I'm like, I would say it's a thing. But to me, it's like all the other groups you have to be supportive of.
Right.
Look at it. If you choose to look at it as, oh, woe is me, I'm being excluded.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like 80% or something, that's kind of like,
Right.
typical argument to make, right? It's like, right now, I'm mentoring a little kid in tech. He's 8 years old. But he's a white male, right? Now, do I say, holy crap, why am I mentoring to a white kid? Boy, I should go find a little black kid. No, because it's him who I met. That's the kid I met, for whatever reason, right? That's the kid I'm mentoring. Why should I exclude him? Because he's not someone who a kid. And if some of the minority would come to me and say, well, tell me not mentoring a black kid. I didn't mean this black kid. This is who I know. You know what I mean? So
Right, absolutely.
passion and that respect of say, hey, let's not get too caught up in this person.
Right.
Am I part of this? Am I doing this? If you can just be compassionate and love everyone and be supportive whether you're in the group or not. If you don't get invited to Stevie's birthday, well, you do. You still
Yeah.
wish him happy birthday when you see him at school.
Exactly.
It was
Yeah.
interesting doing these slides. I can't speak to being a minority besides being a female. I'm Caucasian, and I don't know that experience. And we debated taking out, minority slides. I'm like, I can't really talk to that. I'm like, but it's the same problems. I can still talk to, my experience. I don't, I can't pretend to understand what that is like, but it doesn't mean that I have to exclude it from my talk because the same skills and the same things apply.
Right. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned attracting women to apply for positions. We've fallen pretty short in even getting them to apply. But I really like your idea of maybe changing the job description. And then you took it one step further and mentioned that sometimes, having a software
I think that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, so the question is, have we experimented with not having DevOps-y type stuff in the job description at all? In fact, the last how many people we've hired onto our team, they're all software developers, and I haven't looked
coding
at the
boot
job
camps?
descriptions, but we were hiring explicitly for software engineers rather than systems administrators. Yeah,
Before this talk, we were talking about whether you need a sysadmin skill set. Me coming in as a software developer, when I have someone on my team who's got those really strong sysadmin skills, I find that invaluable because I can do like enough networking stuff to get by. But if Clayton can help me split up that CIDR range because I can't do that math in my head, that's super helpful. So I don't think you just exclude the sysadmins. I think they bring awesome skills to what we do, and we complement each other really, really well.
But if
and
you've
things
already-
like, sorry.
No, you.
Things like pair programming like really helps kind of share that knowledge. You know, if I can pair with someone with a sysadmin background, coming from a development background, like we can rock stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've already got some of those grizzled, gray-bearded sysadmins on your team, yeah, make a posting, right? Right? Yeah, make your listing really developer heavy. So we're at time.
They said they weren't kicking us out because it's the end of the conference, so
I think
people want to chat more.
Let's officially wrap, but if they don't kick us out, I think that's going to be the end of the recording.
you for
Thanks
coming.
very much.